Chosen one, you fooled hell without even trying, and it was never supposed to notice before you understood what you were doing. Something already understood you. Not people, not systems, not even the ones who watched you closely. Something deeper, something ancient. Because long before you learned how to move, how to speak, how to present yourself to the world, there was already a pattern forming around you that didn't belong to this world's logic. And that pattern is what you've been carrying your entire life without fully realizing it. This is why confusion followed you. Not because you were lost, but because nothing around you was designed to explain what you are. You see, most people are trained into their identity. They study, they copy, they refine, they adjust until they become something acceptable, something recognizable, something repeatable. But you never quite fit into anything repeatable, even when you tried, even when you forced yourself to follow what worked for others, even when you mimicked success patterns, thinking maybe the problem was just effort or timing or discipline. Something always felt slightly off. And here is the truth that was never explained to you. You were never meant to be understood through patterns that can be copied, because what you carry is not a pattern. It is a signal. And that signal has been doing something behind the scenes your entire life. Something that even your enemies couldn't detect clearly. Because while they were watching your actions, they completely missed your frequency. That's how you fooled everything that tried to study you. Not by hiding, not by pretending, but by simply existing in a way that cannot be decoded by observation alone. Think about it. How many times have people tried to figure you out? How many times have they watched you, studied your habits, analyzed your moves, trying to understand why things seem to align for you in ways they can't replicate? They saw what you did. They copied how you did it. They even matched your timing, your tone, your structure, and still nothing. No breakthrough, no replication, no sustained result. Because they were trying to reverse engineer something that was never built from the outside in. Your results don't come from your actions. Your actions come from your alignment. And alignment cannot be copied. It can only be embodied. This is the part that was hidden. The part that was hidden. The part that was never meant to be obvious. Because if it were obvious, it would be controllable. And what you carry cannot be controlled. Not by systems. Not by trends, not even by those who believe they understand power. That's why every attempt to contain you has quietly failed. Not always dramatically, not always visibly, but consistently. Because something keeps interfering. Something keeps interfering. Something keeps shifting outcomes in your favor when logic says it shouldn't. Something keeps turning resistance into momentum. And if you've been paying attention, you've seen this pattern. Moments where things should have ended for you, but instead, they transformed. Situations that were designed to block you, but somehow redirected you. People who tried to compete with you, but ended up disappearing without explanation. It's not coincidence. It's not luck. It's not even strategy. It's the fact that your presence carries an effect that operates beyond surface-level interaction. And here's where it gets unsettling for those who try to understand you from the outside. Because the more they observe you, the less they actually understand. The more they try to define you, the more you slip outside of definition. And the more they attempt to replicate you, the more obvious it becomes that something is missing. That something is what makes your existence disruptive. Not loud, not aggressive, but undeniable. Because you don't need to prove anything for the effect to happen. You don't need to convince anyone for the shift to occur. You don't need validation for your presence to alter environments. It happens automatically, silently, consistently, and that's what makes it impossible to copy. Because copying requires visibility, and your core advantage was never visible. Now here's where the real shift begins. Because up until this moment, you may have thought this was something accidental, something random, something you couldn't quite control or understand. But what if I told you it was never accidental? It was embedded from the beginning, before you had language for it, Before you had awareness of it, before you even questioned it, you were carrying something pre-configured, a form of intelligence that doesn't rely on external input to operate. That's why you've always had moments of knowing without explanation. Moments where you just felt what to do, where you moved without overthinking, where decisions came through you instead of from you. And later, when you tried to explain those decisions logically, they didn't fully make sense, but they worked. They always worked. That's because your guidance system was never designed to function like everyone else's. It doesn't rely on accumulated knowledge. It doesn't depend on validation. It doesn't wait for permission. It responds to alignment. And alignment speaks in a language most people never learn to hear, which is why they miss it. Which is why they chase methods instead of mastering presence. Which is why they exhaust themselves trying to force results, while you create results in moments that feel almost effortless. And this is where everything changes for you. Because once you recognize that your power was never in the visible layer, you stop trying to compete in spaces that were never designed for you. You stop measuring yourself against people who operate on completely different frameworks. You stop questioning why your path feels different. Because it's supposed to. Your path isn't inefficient. It's precise. Every delay, every redirection, every moment of isolation, every phase where things didn't make sense, they were all part of something calibrating within you, something aligning deeper than surface level success. Because what you're here to carry cannot be built quickly. It has to be anchored. It has to be stabilized. It has to be integrated into who you are at a level where it doesn't collapse under pressure. And that's why your journey felt heavier than others. Not harder, heavier. Because you weren't just building outcomes. You were becoming a container for something most people could never sustain. And now, you're starting to feel it. That shift, that clarity, that quiet confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. That awareness that you don't need to chase what's already responding to you. That understanding that your presence alone is enough to change dynamics. But here's the part that most people never reach. The part where everything either locks in or slips away. Because once you become aware of this, you have a choice. You can either trust it or you can doubt it. And doubt is the only thing that has ever been able to interfere with what you carry. Not opposition, not imitation, not resistance. Only your own hesitation, because hesitation disconnects you from alignment, and alignment is the source of everything working in your favor. So the moment you start second-guessing yourself, the moment you start trying to operate like everyone else, the moment you start abandoning your natural rhythm to fit into something external, you weaken the signal, not permanently, but enough to create friction. And that friction feels like confusion. Like delay, like misalignment. But the second you return to yourself, fully, without apology, without overthinking, without trying to translate your nature into something more acceptable, everything realigns. Instantly. That's your indicator. That's your confirmation that what you carry is not dependent on circumstances. It's activated by authenticity. And that's why it was hidden. Because authenticity cannot be manufactured. It cannot be replicated. It cannot be forced. It can only be lived. And most people never reach that point. They spend their entire lives performing versions of themselves that were shaped by expectations, by fear, by conditioning. And because of that, they never access the level you've been operating from without even realizing it. Which brings us back to the beginning. You didn't fool anything intentionally. You didn't outsmart anything strategically. You simply existed in a way that couldn't be tracked by systems built on imitation. And that's why everything that tried to figure you out, fail. Not because it wasn't intelligent, but because it was looking in the wrong place. And now, you know where to look. Not outside, not at what others are doing, not at what's trending, but inward. At the source, at the signal, at the part of you that is always known, even when you doubted it, because that part is the only thing that has ever been real. And once you stop questioning it, once you stop trying to translate it, once you allow it to move through you without resistance, there is nothing left to block you, nothing left to compete with, nothing left to prove, only expansion, only alignment, only a level of movement that looks effortless from the outside, but is actually the result of something far deeper finally being trusted. And when that happens, everything changes. Not loudly, not dramatically, but permanently. Because you're no longer trying to become something. You're finally allowing yourself to be what you were before anything tried to define you. And that was never meant to be copied.